Pleasure to see you one start of this brand new year. We're going to be reading from Luke, the 22nd chapter, verse 20. I'm waiting for my signal. Okay. And it reads, likewise also the cup after supper, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood, which is shed for you.
Well, hopefully you can read that in red. Really tough for me being colorblind to see that, but I don't know how well it is for you. Just a reminder of what he already read for us. I want to talk a little bit about the idea of the covenant. One of the things that we had last quarter was a class. We spent a number of weeks talking about covenants in the back adult classroom. So only a handful of our members got to be participating in that. And there's a lot of things from that I would like to teach to everybody. Because Jesus himself really talks about that right before he was to be taken away and tried and then crucified. When he was eating that last supper with them, he took that fruit of the vine, and after they had all kind of shared it, and they'd all poured out some for themselves, and when he raised it up, he said, this cup is poured out for you. It is the new covenant in my blood. And the idea of covenant, I think to you and I, probably doesn't mean a whole lot. If we were to ask, are you connected with any covenants? You might think of, CC&Rs in your homeowners association. But, covenants, something in restrictions. I don't remember where the middle C one is for again. But the idea of covenants are not something that you and I are all that familiar with. We're familiar with contracts, but we're not really all that familiar with the ancient traditions of covenants. And when Jesus mentioned this to them, the Jews all would have understood this because they, as Jews, they relied upon the covenant of their father Abraham. And their special relationship with God had everything to do with that. And so the idea of being in that covenant meant everything. It was all of the glory and blessings they had of being children of Abraham came because of that covenant. And there are more covenants that occurred in the Old Testament, but later on they made the Mosaic covenant, and Moses mediated between God and the people of Israel, a covenant between Israel and God. And the people not only agreed to keep the covenant, but they agreed to abide, and that the covenant would apply to them and all of their children. That's why as generations go by, those children born to Abraham and to his descendants were all obligated to follow it. They didn't have a choice. They had been obligated by their parents. Now you and I aren't obligated into this covenant of Christ's blood. Our parents can't obligate us into this covenant. But all of us have, as Christians who have been baptized into him and raised with new life, we have agreed to this covenant. Sometimes we don't think about it. We don't consider it. I've made an agreement with God that if I do my part, he will give me these blessings. And we generally don't think about the other side of that says, if I don't do what I said I would do for you, I will get the curses you told me. And we don't think about that way. More often than not, especially out in Christianity and kind of the way the world often sees it, especially for people who think of Christianity as something, well, I believed and therefore I'm now saved. It's almost like being saved is a lottery ticket. It's like, hey, look what I found. I believed and now I'm fine. That's not it. This is an agreement. This is a covenant between God and us. God says, I will do these things, and I'm asking you to do your part. This is not a one-way street, it's a two-way street. Each of us have our obligations. He's the master, we're the servant. And that's a particular type of covenant but it's still a covenant nonetheless. And I want to point out at the very beginning of in Luke, and some of this you won't have read if you've been following along just Tuesday or Thursday and Friday in our reading schedule. Haven't got to these parts yet. But both Mary and Zechariah allude to the covenant that came through Abraham after the angel Gabriel tells them about these children they're going to have, both essentially miraculous children. And so I want to read a couple of things from that. Mary, after she had been told by Gabriel she was going to have a child, and she's like, how am I going to have a child? I've never been with a man. And even though she is betrothed and she is promised to her husband Joseph, she has not had sex, and so she's going, how am I going to have a child? And Gabriel tells her that, but he sends her off. She goes and visits her cousin Elizabeth, who already has a child, a miraculous child, not quite the same way as Mary's, but her husband, she is older, and her husband Zechariah and her couldn't have any children, and Gabriel had come and told Zechariah, you're going to have a child, much like Abraham and Sarah did in their old age. And Mary, when she comes and visits and gets in front of Elizabeth, the child, John the Baptist, in her womb gets all excited. And she's like, the child's going crazy. And then Elizabeth herself prophesies. She's full of the Holy Spirit. And she tells Mary about the blessing that she has. And Mary prophesies after that. And this actually comes from the song that Ben loves to do, Magnificat. This is what that song is about. It's Mary's song of praise. She said, my soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. Now, I want you to come down to verse 54 and 55. I don't want to read all of it. But I want you to point out the last thing she said in this little song was, he has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and to his offspring forever. This particular word, mercy, typically in the New Testament, or often when it's translating something from the Old Testament, is translating the Hebrew word hesed. And for those of you who've been around a while, know the emphasis I have placed on understanding that ancient Hebrew word, because it's really critical to understanding the covenant that God had with his people. Because the concept is not only mercy, it's also love and it's commitment to the promises. All three of those are intertwined into God's loving kindness, merciful commitment to his people, and the covenant that he has made with them. He keeps his side of the covenant, always. That's what he basically told his people and proved to them through many generations in the Old Testament. And that's what she's kind of alluding to here. That remembrance of his mercy, that he never will forget the commitment he has made to his people. And he says in verse 55, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and to his offspring forever. So the promise, she's speaking of the promise he gave to Abraham. That's what I put here in Genesis 22 and verse 18. And in your offspring shall all the nations of the earth be blessed, because you have obeyed my voice. That's the promise that he made, by the way, in Genesis 17. After, and I don't know if you're connected, but the covenant that he made with Abraham doesn't occur till Genesis 15. The promise starts in Genesis 12. The covenant happens in 15, but the proof of the covenant happens in 17 after Abraham was going to sacrifice his child Isaac. That's when he gave him this promise. He says, in your offspring, all the nations shall be blessed. That's what Jesus is talking about when he was talking about that memorial that he established of partaking of the bread to remember his body and the fruit of the vine to remember his blood. He was saying, this is the blood of the new covenant. By the way, new covenant implies something, doesn't it? There was a previous one, at least. And the idea that he's telling us there's another covenant here that God is making, and he's making it with you in my blood. By the way, the book of Hebrews talks about it as the eternal covenant in his blood. And just an interesting thing, a side note about the word covenant in the New Testament. Not used a whole lot. Used the beginning here of Luke, used there towards the end of Luke. In all of the New Testament, in the ESV, it's translated, if I remember, 35 times. The word covenant occurs. 19 of them are in the book of Hebrews. So ask Ben about it in the Hebrews class and back. Why does it occur so many times there? Because it's key to understanding the book. The idea of the covenant is critical in the message of the book of Hebrews. And the idea, and we're going to be reading that. That's the last part of this year's reading. We have Luke, Acts, and then Hebrews. And the idea that the covenant is central to being a Christian is really important for us to understand. If we're going to be real disciples and followers of Jesus, we need to know, what have I agreed to? What have I agreed to do? What have I agreed to follow? And so Zechariah, let me just kind of highlight what he said. So Zechariah, if you might remember the story, so Zechariah, when he was told by Gabriel that he and his wife, Elizabeth, were going to have a child, he's like, yeah, how am I supposed to know that's going to happen? And he says, well, since you didn't really believe me, I'm not going to let you talk for a while. And so he comes out of the temple, because he was chosen to go and offer the incense in the holy place. He came out, he couldn't talk. He's giving them signals, I can't talk. And then after the baby's born, his mouth is open, full of the Holy Spirit. He begins to prophesy in chapter 1. And Zechariah begins to say, blessed be the Lord God of Israel, for he has visited and redeemed his people, and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David. By the way, he's not talking about John. John's not in Judah. He's not talking about his own son. He's talking about Jesus, who isn't yet born, but that God has already brought him into the world. He is already in the womb. And so he says, as he spoke by the mouth of his holy prophets from of old, that we should be saved from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show the mercy promised to our fathers, and to remember his holy covenant, the oath that he swore to our father Abraham to grant us, that we, being delivered from the hand of our enemies, might serve him without fear, in holiness and righteousness before him all our days. That, by the way, both Mary and Zechariah do not speak of the covenant God made with Israel through Moses. They speak of the covenant he made to Abraham and the oath he gave to Abraham through his own self. See, oaths, in fact, other passages make this point. Oaths, you swear by somebody greater than yourself when they did oaths. Well, God, since there's nobody greater than God, God swore by himself that he would do it. We're going to look at that a little bit in a moment. But the idea that both of them prophesied that the birth of John, the birth of Jesus, these were God remembering the covenant that he made, that I'm going to save you. But as Zechariah talks about, it's so that we, being delivered from our enemies, might serve him without fear, that we can serve him in holiness and righteousness before him every one of our days. That's our part of the covenant. That's what we're called to do. That's who we're called to be. Not only servants, but holy and righteous. Now, we're not holy, are we, without Christ? We're not righteous without Christ. We're not even God's servants without what Christ has done for us. But that's our part. That's what He's asked of us. And it is upon all of us to keep that commitment to becoming a Christian. It's not enough to just say, well, yeah, I believe He exists. I believe He's real. I believe He's the Master and He's the Lord of all creation. But to really obey the covenant, to really follow the covenant and the commitment I've made, I've said, I'm going to walk with you. I'm going to follow you. Now, fortunately, He has understood that you and I aren't going to do that perfectly. That even when we're walking in the light, His blood is going to have to continually cleanse us from sin because we are sinners. But it doesn't change the fact of our commitment and what we said we would do when we became Christians. Now, I think, unfortunately, a lot of people don't really understand that's the commitment they're making when they become Christians. But that's something that all of us need to burn into our heart and into our minds. That God, because it is the anchor of our soul. And this is where I want to look at in Hebrews chapter 6. We're going to read all of this passage because this really hits at this idea of the covenant. All through the book, by the way, the word covenant appears and comes up regularly. But this one talks about the certainty of God's promise. And he says, for when God made a promise to Abraham, in verse 13, since he had no one greater by whom to swear, he swore by himself, saying, surely I will bless you and multiply you. And thus, Abraham, having patiently waited, obtained the promise. For people swear by something greater than themselves, and in all their disputes an oath is final for confirmation. The idea of an oath is really critical because he talked about God swore an oath, but it also talks about the people swearing an oath. Because in a covenant, in an agreement that you make with other people, both sides sign, right? On the contracts that you have, that you made, if you bought a house, well, there was signing by somebody associated with the lender. It says, I'll give you this much money as long as you send in this much money to me every month with this much interest. And you said, I agree to do that. And when you signed all those documents, you agreed to let somebody in the homeowners association tell you that you've had your garbage cans out too long, that your weeds have grown too much. Right? All those things that sometimes annoy us. But we agreed to it. So we have to keep it. And they're going to do their side. We have to do our side. And that the idea that even Abraham and even Israel, they all swore an oath. They all said, we will do it. When God said, I require this of you, they said, we'll do it. And we will hold our children to it. And so, he says, so when God desired to show more convincingly to the heirs of the promise the unchangeable character of His purpose, He guaranteed it with an oath, so that by two unchangeable things, in which it is impossible for God to lie. So there's two things. He swore an oath that I will save you. I will redeem you. I will take care of you. And I cannot lie. Right? Because how much would an oath matter if the person's a liar? If the person just tells you whatever and you don't trust them and you don't believe them. How important would that oath be? And that's what he's talking about. That's what the writer in here in Hebrews is trying to help us understand. And he says, we who have fled for refuge might have strong encouragement to hold fast to the hope set before us. We have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul. Our hope in God keeping His promise is the anchor of our soul, he tells us. That is everything you and I have to hold on to that says He will help me overcome my enemies and He will save me. And so understand, how important is the anchor? You don't want to be on a boat without an anchor, right? We don't want to be Christians without the convincing, right word, trust that God will keep His promises to us. Because we are the heirs of that promise, aren't we? Part of what the book of Romans talks about, that the heirs of the promise to Abraham are not only those offspring of his flesh, they are also the offspring of his spirit, of his faith. So those who have the faith of Abraham are also heirs to the promise he gave to Abraham. So the covenant that Jesus is making is not a replacement covenant for the covenant he made with Abraham. It is a fulfillment of the covenant he made with Abraham. Very often when we think of the covenant, new covenant, we think of the old covenant. And very often a lot of Christians go, well, the old covenant, that's the Old Testament. That's why it doesn't matter anymore, and that's old. And that's not really good thinking. It's not really good scripture. It's not really good doctrine. Because there are more covenants than just the Mosaic covenant. That one was removed so that Jesus' covenant in His blood could be added. But both of them are under the covenant and promise He made to Abraham. And that is the anchor of our soul, the promise He made to our father Abraham. He's not our father in the flesh. I doubt there's anybody here who's Jewish. Maybe you've got some Jewish ancestry back there somewhere, but we're not Jews. We're Gentiles. Our promise is because we are children of Abraham according to faith. That we trust God like Abraham did. Maybe not quite as sure as he did, but hopefully we trust God like Abraham did, our father in the faith. He says, we have this as a sure and steadfast anchor of the soul, a hope that enters into the inner place behind the curtain where Jesus has gone as a forerunner on our behalf, having become high priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. See, Jesus, a son of David, he couldn't go into that temple in the Old Testament, that shadow of the new. But he did go into the real holy place. What he's referring here, by the way, is using the imagery of the temple or tabernacle. How the first room that the priests would go in, that's one of the things Zechariah was doing when he was burning incense. He was in the holy place. But the inner room, only the high priest could go once a year. And what he's telling us is our high priest, Jesus, not called after Aaron, but called after, like Melchizedek in the Old Testament, who blessed Abraham. We have our high priest who has gone into the Holy of Holies, the holy place, to be before the throne of God, to sit upon the throne of God, and to carry His own blood to that mercy seat. And to sprinkle His blood upon the seat. Because, by the way, in the temple, the blood of the Lamb was sprinkled all over the ark and the mercy seat of God, which was the top of the Ark of the Covenant. And so, the anchor of our soul isn't anchored in the world, it's anchored in God's throne, whom our high priest sits upon as the king and high priest of all of creation. That's the anchor that he's talking about. That's our hope. Our hope is upon the covenant that he made. And so I just want to kind of very quickly, we're going to wrap up here in just a second. One of the most famous discovered ancient covenants was between Hittites and the Egyptians. And ancient world covenants had all five of these things involved. That they identified the two parties. That they described the historical relationship the two parties had. We all know we're sinners, right? What does that mean? Before God, we're sinners, right? He's God, we're sinners. That's our relationship. And then there were stipulations made that each side had to do. Well, that's the commandments or the requirements for each party. Because did God, by oath, give himself requirements? We think about the commandments for us, but did God have commandments? Did he have stipulations? Did he have requirements? Yeah. He by oath said, I will do these things. Now, if you don't do your part, I might do this part. That's the curse. And that's the curse and blessings that were included. But there were divine witnesses very often to the covenant making. Because remember, in the ancient world, they wouldn't have written it down as much as it would have been a verbal one made in front of witnesses. But I want to look at a couple of examples very quick. Not going to look at them, we're just going to mention them. The covenant he made with Noah in Genesis 9. He made with Noah and all of his family. When you and I see the rainbow, that is a sign, a reminder of the covenant he made with Noah and every descendant, which, by the way, means every human being. And so he said, I may make a covenant. That covenant simply said, I'm not going to kill you with flooding anymore. At least not all the world. And then he made a covenant with Israel. Exodus 19 through 24. Those 5-6 chapters really describe the covenant God made with the children of Israel that came out of Egypt. And then in 2 Samuel 7, in verse 1 through 17, that's a passage, by the way, that should be almost as burned into your head as Genesis 12, the promise to Abraham. Because that's the promise he gave to David, that your son will always sit upon the throne. And that promise was really almost as important as the promise he made to Abraham. That's why Jesus himself is a son of David. The promise, though, to Abraham in Genesis 15, this is where we actually see the commitment or the covenant made between God and Abraham. And when he makes it, what's interesting in that passage, I'm not going to go read it just because of time this morning, but he goes and he reads it, and he makes a covenant, and Abraham in the beginning is going, I don't have any children. You've made this promise to me, but I don't have any children. My heir is, a servant in my household. And he's like, no. In fact, this is the chapter where God says, your name will not be Abram anymore, which means exalted father. He says, your name is going to be Abraham, which means father of multitudes. He changed his name to emphasize what he was going to do to him. You are going to have so many children, nobody can even begin to count it. And he's like, okay. Now, we're told in that passage he believed God. Of course, he didn't understand it, but he believed him. And then, a little bit later on, Abraham is put to sleep. And then God is speaking to him in visions, in kind of a dream vision. And one of the things that happens at the end of this section is that he puts Abraham to sleep. Or he's asleep and he's giving him these visions and telling him what he's going to do. And then they slaughter an animal and put it on two halves. They put it half of the animal here, half the animal here. And then God takes a smoking urn and a light and passes it between the animals. Because in the ancient world, these covenants, this is what they would do. They would slaughter an animal, cut it in half, lay it on two sides, and each side of the covenant, the two people who were making the covenant would walk between the animal. So it's kind of the idea of the blood of the covenant. There are always blood involved in the covenant. But what is the symbolism of this animal slaughtered in two? And I'm going to give you what it essentially means. And that comes from Jeremiah 34:18. God refers to it when he was destroying his people and destroying Judah. He says, and the men who transgressed my covenant and did not keep the terms of the covenant that they made before me, I will make them like the calf that they cut in two and passed between its parts. The curse. See, a covenant has, here's the blessings I will give you when you do your part. Like when you signed and bought a home and that lender gave your people a bunch of money on your behalf and then you're paying them back. They didn't just go, well, we're just so nice. We're going to just give people a bunch of money for you because we like you. They went, no, you're going to pay us. You're going to pay us interest. And if you don't pay us that interest, we're going to take your house from you. That's the curse of the covenant. Understand there's a curse to the covenant. Because God, and the book of Hebrews kind of goes into this idea some. If we reject the blood of the covenant after we have accepted it, how much worse, as Hebrews says, will that be for people than people who never committed in the first place? And by the way, New Testament tells us that. It's not just the same, if you and I were to fall away and not follow God, it's not the same as somebody who never believed. New Testament actually tells us it's worse for those who have known Him and left than it is for those who have never known Him. Because we are committing ourselves not only to the blessings, but we are committing ourselves that if we walk away, if we fall away, if we leave God, that He has told us He will bring His curse upon us. Book of Revelation talks about all kinds of curses. He says, he who breaks this or doesn't keep these things, I will bring these curses upon you. And those things were written, that letter was written to those who followed Him in 7 churches. You don't keep these things. You don't do what I say. You don't keep following me like you committed to. That won't go well for you. That's the warning of the covenant. The covenants have a blessing and they have a cursing. They have a great thing and they have a warning. We need to be conscious of that. We're going to end there this morning.